What's good, Orange Nation? This is Neil Adler with another episode of Syracuse Central via the Fan Arch Network. And we're fewer than 2 weeks away from the start of the Syracuse football season as they play the Volunteers on August 30th. That's a Saturday in Atlanta, and I can't wait for that game. So we're going to have a lot of Syracuse football content this week, but we're going to start off the week with some Syracuse basketball recruiting and a little bit of just Syracuse basketball looking ahead to the upcoming season. And we're going to start with the 2027 class from a recruiting perspective. Syracuse has offered scholarships that I'm aware of to at least 13 guys in this class. This is the rising junior class. Starting on June 15th, this past June 15th, that contact period for the 2027 class opened up. That meant that college coaches, including Syracuse, could reach out directly to rising juniors. And around June 15th, and then, in the next week or so, lots of reports came out. Syracuse reached out to more than 24 guys. Some of them got scholarships. Syracuse continues to evaluate other guys. And one of the guys that I don't think has gotten a scholarship yet, but Syracuse is in contact with, and I would assume will offer at some point, he's from North Carolina. His name is King Gibson. And he is a top 5 national prospect in this class. He's obviously a 5-star prospect as well. He's a guard, combo guard. He's listed different recruiting sites: combo guard, point guard, shooting guard. He's a guard. Again, one of the best prospects overall in this class. He's heard from Syracuse basketball since that contact period opened on June 15th. He's hearing from them more recently. He recently told Rivals that when he went through his recruitment. He's starting to set up visits in the near future, whether they be official visits or unofficial visits. He mentioned 2 schools he wants to visit for sure. North Carolina out of the ACC and Alabama. Let's see if Syracuse offers him, which I think they probably will, and if he ends up taking a visit to Syracuse at some point. He played for Montverde Academy last year, which is one of the top independent basketball academies around the country. But then for his junior year, he has transferred to the Spire Academy in Ohio. The new head coach of Spire is Kevin Boyle, who used to lead Montverde and won multiple national championships there. Spire is going to be a preseason top 5 to top 10 team. They're absolutely loaded. And another guy that transferred to Spire, Syracuse basketball recruiting enthusiasts will probably know this guy's name, Alex Costanza. He is a Syracuse basketball target, officially visited last fall. There's talk of him maybe potentially visiting again. I talk frequently with his dad, either on the phone or via text, and he told me not too long ago that Alex has Syracuse still on his radar. He doesn't have any sort of list at this point, but that's a guy for Syracuse basketball fans to monitor in the 2026 class. He's a 5-star guard/small forward, so he's 1 year ahead of King. Anyway, look for Syracuse to potentially offer King Gibson in the near future, and I'll continue to monitor that. He is an extremely highly ranked prospect in that 2027 class, and Syracuse is really starting to ramp up their efforts in 2027 as well. So we'll monitor King's recruitment. Next, we're going to move to the 2026 class for these next 2 segments. As I've talked about recently on Syracuse Central, Syracuse basketball coaches are fine-tuning, honing in on, and kind of their strategy and their recruiting efforts for 2026, which is the rising senior class. Those efforts are really coming into focus. They're still looking for their first verbal pledge in 2026, like a lot of schools out there, but who their top targets are and potential verbal pledges in the near future, that's kind of all coming into focus more. And one guy I'm going to talk about here is Dakari Spear from Texas. He's a 4-star shooting guard, a top 75 national prospect. He was offered by Syracuse last fall in October. He has said recently that he is going to officially visit Syracuse. I haven't been able to nail down a date from my sources yet, but unless something weird transpires, he will visit the Hill at some point. But he's been visited by Syracuse basketball coaches multiple times. Once at his former high school in Texas, and then on the EYBL circuit at least once, if not more. And so Dakari recently released a top 5, and it's Syracuse, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Vanderbilt, and Virginia Tech. And he played last year at the Colony High School in the Colony, Texas. Joe tipped in a top national reporter from On3 Rivals noted in a recent piece that Dakari averaged, and I'm just getting the stats here, 23.7 boards last year for the Colony High School. That's pretty good. So, like a lot of these other top prospects, he moved schools for his senior year, and he's going to play at another Texas school, Dynamic Prep, out of Irvine, Texas. Dynamic Prep went to the final game of the Chipotle Nationals this past April, which is the season-ending national championship tournament in high school basketball. And teams, like I mentioned, Montverde has won it many times. This past year, Dynamic Prep made it to the final game. They lost to Christopher Columbus from Miami, which is where the two Boozer twins went, and they're with at Duke now. So Dakari is going to be on a national stage, has a chance to play in that Chipotle Nationals as a senior. He played well on the EYBL circuit this spring and summer for, and I want to get this right, it was Drive Nation, which is also based in Irving, Texas. So I think Syracuse, they're obviously very heavy for Dakari. I haven't seen any analyst projections about Dakari yet in terms of where he's headed. I think Syracuse is right there. Do I think they're the favorite? I don't know. We'll have to see all about his official visit schedules and how things go, and I'll continue to monitor that. But Syracuse is obviously in his top 5 and right there. And if I had to peg one of the front runners, I would have Syracuse there. He's spoken very highly of his relationship with the Syracuse staff, Adrian Autry, Alex Klein, other members of the coaching staff, and he's really interested in Syracuse. And we'll look out for that visit. And it's great that Syracuse made the top 5. And he's definitely a priority target for Syracuse. So we're going to move from him to another guy in the 2026 class. Let's see if I get this right. Yes, I did it right. Okay. You never know with my technology abilities. So I hope I pronounce his name right. His name is Aliou Dioum, and he is from, I believe he's from Senegal originally. He is a fast-rising power forward / center in the 2026 class, 4 stars, top 80 prospect according to Rivals, and kind of like Dakari with a list cut. This young man also released his final 6, top 6, not top 5, but he included Syracuse in his top 6. Again, that was according to Joe Tipton of On 3 Rivals. You should definitely follow him. That dude knows his stuff as well as anyone, gets a lot of scoops. But Dio, and again, I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, but this young man, he put a top 6 out of Syracuse basketball, Illinois, Mississippi State, UNLV, Wake Forest, and West Virginia. And so, am I surprised about Syracuse making the top 6? Not necessarily. There's certain prospects from class to class where we hear more kind of out there in the public sphere about their recruitments and list cuts and visits and this and that, and they give some high school prospects give a ton of interviews and they mention Syracuse as being in the mix and all that, and some maybe other prospects are more flying under the radar in terms of their recruitments being out there in the public sphere. And obviously I hear certain things, but then also rely on recruiting analysts and their interviews with prospects, and we're here, Syracuse is heavy for this guy and this guy. So in terms of DOM, I haven't heard as much kind of out there, but that doesn't mean Syracuse isn't recruiting him hard. It's just that, again, he hasn't been as vocal in interviews that I've come across. That being said, not too long ago, he did mention in an article that he really likes Syracuse. And one of the reasons why, and he mentioned this to Sam Lance, who's a friend of mine. He writes for Zag's Blob, really good guy. Sam Lance had an interview with DOM, and he talked about Syracuse being one of his favorite schools because Carmelo Anthony went there, and Carmelo is one of his favorite players, and he said Syracuse is a great option for him. So that was earlier this summer. So when he came out with his top 6, I wasn't surprised that Syracuse made his top 6. I think that's great. In the 2026 class, Syracuse is definitely recruiting in terms of offers and who they're heavily pursuing. It seems like they're definitely out there for a lot more like point guards, combo guards, shooting guards, and then wing players, whether it's small forwards, hybrid forwards, etc. From like a big man perspective, power forwards and centers, they, to me, haven't offered as many guys that fit those position groups, but DOM is one of them. And another who I've talked about is 4-star power forward, wing power forward / center, Asher Elson, who isn't necessarily a traditional 7 foot, 250 pound center, but he is a 6'10", 6'11" guy from New York City, fast rising, and he's going to visit, as I've mentioned on here, he's going to visit Syracuse in October. So we'll have to see about Dioum in terms of a visit to Syracuse. He has visited several of his other finalists, or I should say, he's planning to visit several other of the teams in his top six. So we'll see about Syracuse. He plays at CIA Bella Vista in the EYBL Scholastic, which is arguably the top basketball conference in high school hoops. Other targets for Syracuse play in that conference: Spire with Alex Costanza and King Gibson. They're moving into the EYBL Scholastic this year. Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White both played there last year. Kyan was at Long Island Lutheran. Sadiq was at IMG in Florida. So Dioum is on a national stage. CI Bella Vista in Phoenix was a top 10 team last year, made it to the Chipotle Nationals. They look to get there again this year. Another guy to keep an eye on with that program is Von Carvala, who transferred for his senior year from a program in Wisconsin, where he's from, to CI Bella Vista. He's unofficially visited Syracuse and will officially visit Syracuse in late September, and is another priority target. So again, 2026 coming more into focus. And Dioum played for the Phoenix-based Arizona Unity in the EYBL circuit this past year, and was solid. He's not a heavy scorer, but he's a good rebounder and shot blocker. And Syracuse was in for him in Arizona Unity on the EYBL circuit during live periods, so they're clearly showing an interest in pursuing Dioum. And we'll see how things shake out. But he's one to watch. He's got Syracuse in his top six, obviously. And I'm saying this, and this is like duh, but Syracuse needs to get him on the hill for a visit if they really want to ultimately have a shot. I just don't see recruits committing to a school that they haven't visited before. Stranger things have happened, but I just don't see that here. So look for Dioum to visit Syracuse at some point, hopefully. And again, things really coming into focus for Syracuse in that 2026 class. All right, we're going to finish up here with... There, I got it right. Whew. We're going to finish up here with some actual Syracuse basketball, shift away from recruiting. And, a lot of the talk in recent years, obviously, has been on Syracuse's struggles. I get it. Hey, listen, I went to Syracuse in the late 90s, graduated in 2000, loved my alma mater, been following Syracuse since I was a preteen in the 80s. I love Pearl Washington and all, old school, the Big East. And we all know that Syracuse hasn't been to the ACC tournament. Thankfully, they've been to the ACC tournament. We know they haven't been to the NCAA tournament since 2021 when they went on that Sweet 16 run as a double-digit seed. Last year was a disaster. Not going to sugarcoat it. I'm glad Adrian Autry is coming back. I think he deserves a third year. He's got this recruiting class coming in that's top 15 nationally with Kyan Anthony, Sadiq White, Luke Fennell, and Aaron Womack, as well as a center, an underrated center, in my opinion. 3-star prospect, Sheffing Diawara. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. I've been told his first name is Sheffing. That's how it's pronounced, Diawara. And he's more of a developmental player, but they've got, here's what I'll say. I think Syracuse has a more athletic roster on paper this year than last year. Some fans have bemoaned the fact that they don't have a traditional center, but I'll say this. Their centers, they've got an incoming freshman in Diawara as well as 2 transfers. They're not, the traditional 7-foot beefy center. They're 6'9" guys that have really massive wingspans, and led by William Kyle III from UCLA, who's going to, I believe, is going to be the starting center. These guys are ultra athletic, play above the rim, just more mobile and agile than centers in recent years. Obviously, the center spot is a hot button topic, but I just think this roster is athletic. It's got versatility. A lot of the guards can play in both guard spots. You've got multiple guys that can play out on the wing, whether it's in a guard position or small forward. I like their forward group with Donnie Freeman, Sadiq White, and Tyler Betsy, who transferred from Cincinnati, former top 50 national prospect who was recruited by Syracuse in high school, went to Cincinnati, and now is transferred to Syracuse. I think they've got a deep rotation of guards. I like the roster. They're non-conference, as I talked about a couple episodes ago. It's got some tough games out in Vegas. Got Tennessee coming to the Dome for the ACC SEC Challenge. But I think it's a manageable non-conference where if they could get to 10 wins, that's part of the problem. They've started out slow in the non-conferences in recent years. I believe last year they were 6-5. That's not going to get it done. You've got to win, and they're bumped up to 13 non-conference and 18 ACC games moved down. The ACC did that because they want teams in the conference to have more non-conference opportunities to boost up their nets. So they've got a challenging non-conference, but also a manageable one where they've got a lot of neutral site games, and I think they could go 10-3 and better, and that's a great kind of stepping stone to the ACC schedule, which is, there's some good teams in there that they have to play, but some of the heavyweights or projected heavyweights, they don't play twice. So, we'll see how things go this year. They're not in March Madness projections, whatever. They'll probably be projected as a middle-of-the-pack ACC team. Hey, listen, fly under the radar, kind of like Syracuse football. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about briefly here, I like this roster on paper, but I wanted to talk about the starting five. So from my perspective, and leave comments in the comment section, let me know what you think. I think their starting five is going to be Nathan George, the transfer from Georgia Tech at point guard, obviously. He was a top point guard in the league last year. He's going to start. Of course, the senior, one of the leaders of the team, J.J. Starling, is going to start at shooting guard. I personally think Nate Kings, who shot 44% last year at Oregon State, is going to be the small forward, the wing player. Start at the 3 spot. Donnie Freeman, who only played 14 games last year, but a top 10 national prospect in the 2024 class from the DMV, and it was off to a nice campaign. He needed to work on his defense ahead of this season, just like the rest of the team, but I think he'll start at power forward, and then William Kyle. Let me know what you think. I'm curious if you think, any of the other guys. I don't think any of the freshmen are going to start. Kyan, Luke could get some time, but I don't see them starting. I guess a case could be made that maybe does Tyler Betsy start at the 3? I feel like he's more of a, more of a 3-4. Sadiq White, I don't know if I think that's the starting 5. But I think they got some nice pieces to come in and complement those guys. Like I said, you've got Donnie Freeman starting. Sadiq White could plug in. Tyler Betsy could come in. We'll have to see like a guy like Bryce Afeer from Montana State. I don't know. He's a veteran player. I don't know how much he plays, run he's going to get. And again, the freshman. And then you've got Ibrahim Soare from Georgia Tech, who did have a ton of production last year, but like William Kyle is ultra athletic. We'll see how much run he gets. Look, it's an unproven roster in the sense that some of these guys didn't have a ton of production last year, but they also, I think the most important thing that Syracuse basketball fans, myself included, have to kind of wrap our heads around is that, like a lot of other teams, they just had a huge roster makeover. They have 11 new guys. 2 guys returned from last year's team, JJ and Donnie. The rest are all new. They're either incoming freshmen or transfers. So it's just a new team. And I think it's going to be a better team than last year. And I think they're going to contend for an NCAA tournament spot. So I'm excited. So that's my starting 5. Let me know what you think. Hope you've liked this edition. This is Neil Adler for Syracuse Central on the Fan Arch Network. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care, friends.